All right, Charlie. Charlie, where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
So I grew up in Boyle Heights, which is like the first little area just outside of downtown going east, which
Yeah,
is right
just
over that way.
just right over the bridge.
A few miles, a few miles away.
Tell me about your family growing up.
Well, I'm an only child, so no siblings whatsoever. It was just my mom and I. My mom left my dad when I was 2 because she saw that he was not going to be a proper male figure, role model uh, for me. So even then, she was looking out for my best interest. I mean, to where she would be located. So she moved from here, oddly enough, which was 6th and San Pedro in '84.
Oh, she lived down.
Yeah, they lived right here.
Down here.
And then headed out to Boyle Heights. She moved in with like some other women. And so that's where I grew up primarily, then moved very few times, but always within a 1 block proximity. So I stayed within the same area, same school. But family was a big thing for me because it was the one thing that I lacked the most, I felt. And like I wasn't privileged to have a family unit, as I called it, a mom, dad, brother, sister, housekeeper, dog, neighbor.
Your dad was out of the picture.
Yeah, he was out. Well, he was in. So in my mom's naivety, I mean, she once said, "I can't teach you to be a man, so only your father can." So she always spoke well of him, even though they separated, because she knew he was my dad. So she would take me to him and drop me off at his place on weekends every now and then. But my dad, I mean, she didn't know any better. She was naive. She thought she was doing the best. I mean, she meant well. And so my dad was he was an alcoholic. He drank, did a lot of coke. But he was my god, my hero. So. I would see him like on weekends, maybe 1 or 2 weekends out of the month, perhaps, at most. But that's also where I was first introduced to drugs. Like my dad, he lived somewhere. He lived with his buddies up here somewhere, and I remember him distinctly saying, "Oh, grab Charlie and take him into the other room." And so, of course, I ran back as soon as his buddy let me go because I wanted to see what my dad was doing, and what I now know is cocaine. I thought he was snorting salt off the table. I was like 8 years old. However, when I got home, I got salt and chopped it up with a razor blade, just like my dad did, and snorted it up my nose, just like my dad did, and went running to my mom, crying because my nose was bleeding, saying, "Why didn't my dad cry? Why am I crying?" And I just remembered that.
So you had a fascination with drugs.
Fascination with drugs, yeah. But family, that was the one thing that I wish I had most of.
When did you start using?
So I started using, I wouldn't even say habitually, but the first time I used, I tried was like, at 10 years old, I smoked like a roach of marijuana, but I spit it out because I was like, I can't do this to my mom, and I threw it away, which is really intriguing, looking in hindsight. I actually had that willpower and the thought of my mother to not use. But once I hit like 13, I started smoking pot, and I fell in love with it. It was about 13 or 14. Habitual user by 14, I believe.
Mostly
pot, just pot. That's all it was. But then growing up, I grew up in Boyle Heights, and back in those days, the predominant drugs were pot, stress, cocaine, and heroin. Although I never really saw it, but I saw a lot of crackheads. And so it was easily accessible to do cocaine. So that started hitting the picture. Once you had more friends as you got older, it came in the picture. But again, see, back in those days, I was also into punk rock. I was into the East LA underground punk rock scene. So on weekends, I'd go off and do gigs and whatnot, or I'd either participate and play in a gig, or I'd just go and hang out and get drunk and coked out of my mind. So I became a weekend warrior at a very early age. I look at now, like 15, 16 years old. High school, doing well somewhat. I wasn't applying myself, but I was getting by. But on the weekends, I just partied. And then I first tried speed in 10th grade. And when I tried it, I felt like God. I felt like I could take on the world. Like I had no insecurity whatsoever. And but then I'd never found that again. And the drugs thing it's weird though, because when I'm sober, I'm a completely different person. I'm the same person, however, my likes and interests are far different from when I'm getting loaded. But when I'm getting loaded, it's like I realize that drugs and alcohol have taken up a significant part of my life.
How old are you now?
I just turned 41 in May.
41?
Which is nuts.
You're 41?
I'm 41.
You look 23.
I look shot out is what I look like. Thank you. No, when I'm sober, I love going to the gym. And I'm usually like, maybe 10 pounds bigger muscular wise. I love bodybuilding and stuff, but I look haggard and old now. But thank you, though. I mean, I think I got my first gray hair on my chin.
So what are you using now?
Meth and heroin. Yeah. Meth and heroin. It's been like that for some time.
And you're living on the streets?
I am. So every time I get loaded, every time I relapse, I create this great beginning, great job, great potential, the same story you hear all the time. And then I all I want to do is just get drunk one night and just do one goofball, one mixed syringe full of meth and heroin, just to feel that. And I wind up binging, but mostly back here. And the reason I started coming here as a kid was because since my grandmother's bar was up the street, and as a kid growing up, it was like, I was jaded by all this. So, but I knew no one I knew would ever dare come here, so no one could find me here. So I can get loaded on the street, and then the next day just go home.
What's going through your head when you're clean and you relapse? Like you know it's going to take you down, but you do it anyway.
See, here's the thing. I've gone over this 1,000 times. I've had psychiatrists, I've had counselors. It's not the romancing or glamorizing of the drug use or the euphoric recall that gets me loaded. I always wind up setting myself up to where there's one event or one situation or one person, a woman, to where something happens and I can't take it anymore. And I get so hung up and so depressed that I just want to numb out that pain. And so before I had it, there was such a psychological variable to it. Before it was just more like, I think I want to get high. Yeah, I probably should. No, I'd rather not because of those consequences. But see, now I think I put the blame on myself because I'm the only one to blame. But I place so much emotional pain prior to my relapses that it seems like that's exactly why I relapse. But I'm in so much emotional pain that I say, fuck it. I used to say, just as long as you just don't stick a needle in your arm, or just don't go past this weekend. It's crazy though, because I'm not one to just use for months on end or years on end. I start up. Everyone loves helping me. Everyone sees that I try, and I really do. I was sober 2.5 years before I relapsed. I had my daughter, and I was
2.5 years.
Yeah, AA sponsoring everything, and I've always gone back to meetings. But
do you think it's the pain of some emotional thing that you went through as a child, or is it just that you inherited your dad's DNA?
That's the thing, and this is why. Initially, in the beginning, I always thought, well, I had a, I don't think any event makes me an alcoholic. And I used to say these are just the cards that I was dealt with, and so mostly as a kid, it was like the fact that I was alone. I was alone so much as a kid, and I put so much emphasis on that because it hurt so bad just to be alone. And as a kid, it's like normal, image you have of a child in their childhood is a family and someone to talk to. Just what it wasn't where I was, and so I used to think that it was because of those reasons that I got loaded, and then I realized no, it's not that. It's just I've thought of for far too long. I've tried to figure out why I drank and used, and I just fucking ran around in circles. But I think now I just really sit and think as to whether or not I do it because I just want to do it and I don't care. But how can I not care? I think I did the worst thing I could have ever done. May 30th.
What was that?
My mom picked up my daughter me and my mom picked up my daughter from her parents' place and took her back to my mom's place. I don't have my own place, so fortunately I have a great relationship with my kid and her parents, her mom and stepdad. Had that weekend with my kid, my mom, took her back home, and then decided to stay at my mom's place for another night before I went back to my cousin's place, where I was actively looking for a treatment center. He was letting me stay there. And my mom said, sure, fine, I'd love to have you here. Why wouldn't you? And she goes on to work. I grab some meth and heroin, and I come back. I'm getting loaded. She calls maybe at 11 o'clock. And then I know she's going to be home at 3:30. And just before she gets home, I'm whacked out. I've done way too much, way too fast. I start doing heroin, and the next thing I know is I open my eyes, and I'm looking at my mom's ceiling with like 4 paramedics in front of my eyes. And I'm like, no. This is just like on TV. Like, I never thought I'd do this, but I said, no, Charlie, this isn't happening. This isn't happening. It's a fucking dream. And I'm slapping myself because I know what's happening, but I can't believe that it's happening. Like, I can't believe that it's happening. And then I can hear my mom's like, just terror. She got home to her only child, fucking purple, clutching something in his hand and purple.
What does this do to you emotionally?
And yeah, that's the thing is I don't think I've allowed myself to really process it because, and this is where a lot of the shame kicks in, and I think it really adds to my addiction. But it's like the disappointment I've set on my mom for so many years. It's too much for me to bear, and I think this was just like the icing on the cake that just destroys her. I mean, you know, this is something any parent who has a drug-addicted child, you know, fears to face as to whether or not their kid's going to die from that addiction. My mom had to live that, but she will never forget that because I didn't die. But she'll always look back on that day, and I haven't called my mom since.
Out of shame.
Out of shame. But. And also, you know, once I turned 41, I mean, actually when I hit 40, it's like, I've been relapsing about every 3 to 4 months at that point. And now I'm just like, I'm running out of ideas as to how to stay sober. I'm 40 fucking years old. I went from wanting to go to UC Santa Cruz, you know, being most likely to succeed. And
what's your biggest fear now?
My biggest fear now is that I not get sober, and that I cause more emotional and psychological pain to my daughter.
You still have friends?
Always had friends. I've always been that gregarious individual. I've always had a bunch of friends, really good friends. A lot of normie friends, because I always want to keep myself, you know, connected to the world outside of Alcoholics Anonymous. And but it seems like after these few years, during this relapse or this, whatever I want to call it, a lot of those good friends, like normal friends, are moving on. You know, they don't get it. They don't get addiction, but and all my other friends in Alcoholics Anonymous and whatnot, I mean, they know they have to move on if I'm not willing to jump back on the boat. But you know, it's easy to say like I'm alone. It's like I know I'm not, but I kind of am. But now it feels like I don't know. It's weird.
What's your biggest regret?
My biggest regret. I mean, not having gone to school, I think, because that's all I wanted to do. Not because I knew it was the biggest thing to have. The most important thing in life was a degree. It wasn't because of that, because that was the idea back in those days. We're talking about like the 2000s, in the 90s. But I just wanted to go to school, have a thirst for knowledge. I really wanted to expand on things that I always had interests in. It's that, or the most important, I think, which is I regret having caused so much emotional pain to ones that loved me. And I think it's because if I was like an asshole, if I was one of those people that just ran the streets, hurt people, was in and out of prison, didn't care. If I was that type of person, I think it wouldn't matter. The thing was that I'm not. And I've always put a good effort into changing my life. And so I've always accrued a wealth of support.
You seem like you're a great person. You just have this addiction problem that screws up everything.
I've had some great opportunities.
What would you say is your greatest strength?
I mean, I want to say resilience. I feel like I'm not that resilient though, but I guess I am, in the sense that I do see and accept the fact that regardless of how bad a relapse might be, or how bad I messed up or whatever, I do have the ability to just say, okay, well, whatever, let's pick ourselves up and, move forward, and not walking around with this like badge of disappointment, but with a badge of being proud of the fact that I am changing and I have the privilege to change. Because when I do get sober, like I said, it's like I want to take on the world again. I don't just, sit and say that my life's fucked.
Is there a self-destructive streak in you?
Yeah.
Is that it?
That's the thing, is I'm like two people. One of my biggest fears now is this relapse has gone on for a while. I've never stayed out on the street this long. I've never been in a tent.
The relapses tend to you start up right exactly where you were last time, right?
I did. And
you don't build to.
And the thing was, I didn't care, because, as long as I'm well, it's not so much the idea that I say, well, it's not so bad. It's that I just think it doesn't matter. And whenever I start kicking, when I start kicking, because that's gone on long enough that I not use, or I'm sobering up just a tad bit, and my sober self starts, looking at where I'm at and how I'm living, like, it freaks me out. It scares me. So then I have to numb that out. Because I've walked down here sober, in recovery, because I have to use the trains and the buses. And I've been like, holy shit, get me out of here. And that's like in the morning or the afternoon. That's with daylight. And now it can be 2:00 in the morning and I'm walking around like nothing.
Here you are.
Here I am.
It's not about common sense or intelligence, is it?
Everyone says intelligence is against you when it comes to combating addiction.
Yeah, it's almost like the more intelligent you are, the worse it is.
I keep thinking about it too much, but I think it's probably the worst disease there is.
Certainly frustrating.
But then on a different day, you can talk to me and ask me the same questions, and be like, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm an addict and I have those deficiencies, but I do have the ability to get sober, and I'm sober, and I'm totally positive, optimistic, and I'm I'm proactive in whatever I do and anything that I do, which is the way I'd like to be. And I don't get depressed nearly as much as to my life's past, or what I could have done, what I didn't do. I want to get back to that. I see that I have value for people. I have value to give to people.
Is it a self-worth issue?
I think it's a 100% self-worth issue.
Yeah.
Brene Brown was right.
Sometimes I just think it's as simple as that. Because if your self-worth is really where it should be, you wouldn't allow this stuff to creep into your life.
I wouldn't allow any idea of any insecurity beat me down into this, because it would be inconceivable for me to think less of myself, because I'd be worth it. I am, which I am, but it's like, it's an empty I am.
What that implies is that what you believe about yourself dictates everything that's going to happen to you.
It does, and that's a scary thought, because I'm wearing it on my sleeve when I don't typically.
What do you do for money when you're down and out?
So, well, when I'm down and out, I just try to, what can I do? I think about this every day. I'm like, how do I come up with money? I do. It's just stupid little odds and ends, just dumb little things like take a survey, or do an interview, or like calling a friend and hey, do me a favor, this and that. So I go get, I get dressed, I shave, whatever. I look as clean as I can. I go over, do him a favor, which takes like 20 minutes, and then he gives me $100. But just because he's a friend, he's helping me out. But those resources get exhausted, and so at some point people start asking, like, why do you keep asking me for, stuff to do to pay you, and so that doesn't last too long. One thing I can't do, I've never done really, is boost. I can't walk into a Kmart or a Target and take something. I'm a horrible hustler. But usually what I do is, I'm working and I just save up a little money and a couple of grand, and then something happens and I relapse, and I go through all that. But
What's been your lowest point?
my lowest point, to me, would be more emotional, I guess. Just the lack of presence in my daughter's life.
How old's your daughter?
She just turned 12.
That's always hard for a parent.
Yeah. She really loves me. I really love her, but those first 3.5 years were great. I had her every other weekend. And now it's like, and she said this to me on our last visit. She said, it seems like I speak to you and then I won't hear from you for another 3 or 4 months. And then you pop up again, and that's exactly the way it's been the last few years. My mom.
Charlie, what would you say is the most important lesson you've learned in all of this?
I can't answer that.
You're in the middle of it.
Hmm?
You're in the middle of it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. But I want to one day say the lesson was, that people do love you because you are worth being loved.
Yeah. I think believing that you are worth the love of others and all the good fortune that can come in your life, believing you deserve that is it sounds easy, but it's a huge step to make.
It's like the most basic of ideas, or like rudimentary ideas of just being a whole human being. But when that little piece is missing, it doesn't matter how smart you are or people think you are.
I'm not a religious person, but I think that's where God and religion and all that can actually be really beneficial.
Everyone in AA, outside of AA, all my friends that love me, everyone that cares, has been saying the same thing to me. Like,
I think there are messages in all of that that can be really helpful for somebody like you. You're just not going to hear it from me. All right, Charlie. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I wish you all the luck in the world, man.